A woman chooses the man who stands alone because his solitude speaks of strength, confidence, and self-respect. He doesn't chase, beg, or fear losing anything. His independence creates mystery. His boundaries command respect, and his presence feels earned. She is drawn to the man who leads himself first. A man who stands alone is rooted in self-respect because he understands that the most powerful relationship he will ever have is the one he builds with himself. He does not fear solitude. He embraces it because it is in those quiet moments that he strengthens his identity. While others need constant attention, approval, or companionship to feel valued, he has learned that real confidence is formed in silence. He knows who he is, what he wants, and what he refuses to tolerate. His self-worth is not determined by how many people choose him, but by the standards he sets for his own life. Standing alone doesn't mean he is isolated or unavailable. It means he is selective. He guards his energy with intention. He doesn't give access to everyone because he understands that not everyone deserves a seat at his table. By choosing to stand alone, he communicates that he will not lower his standards just to be accepted. He would rather walk his path alone than compromise his integrity for temporary comfort. This level of self-respect is rare, and it is the reason why his presence feels powerful without him ever raising his voice. He is not driven by ego, but by clarity. He doesn't entertain chaos, drama, or disrespect because he knows that accepting less than what he deserves is a form of self-betrayal. He has built his confidence through discipline, setting goals, maintaining boundaries, and refusing to settle for mediocrity. When he removes himself from spaces that drain him, he sends a message to the world: I know my value. People may misunderstand him or call him distant, but he doesn't explain himself. He doesn't need validation for choices grounded in self-worth. A man who stands alone doesn't chase situations or people who fail to reciprocate his effort. He knows that chasing what isn't aligned only leads to disappointment. Instead, he allows what is meant for him to gravitate naturally. He trusts himself enough to walk away, even from things he once wanted. This ability to detach with dignity is a sign of emotional maturity. It shows that he would rather protect his peace than force something that compromises his identity. His solitude builds him. It sharpens his focus, strengthens his discipline, and allows him to grow without distraction. While others avoid being alone because it exposes their insecurities, he uses that same space to refine himself. He becomes emotionally stronger, mentally sharper, and spiritually grounded. When he eventually chooses to connect with others, he does so from a place of abundance, not neediness. He stands alone not because he is weak or broken, but because he refuses to break himself for others. This is what makes him stand out. His self-respect radiates through the way he speaks, the decisions he makes, and the boundaries he keeps. People are drawn to him not because he is available to everyone, but because he is true to himself in a world where most people abandon themselves just to be liked. His solitude reflects emotional maturity because he isn't running from himself. He is willing to face his inner world without fear. Most people distract themselves with noise, relationships, and constant stimulation because silence forces them to confront their insecurities. But he embraces that silence. He understands that solitude is not emptiness, it is clarity. It is the space where he observes his emotions, understands them, and learns to control them instead of being controlled by them. His ability to be alone without feeling lonely shows that he has built emotional stability from within, not from external sources. He doesn't depend on temporary attention to feel whole. He doesn't need validation to feel valuable. He knows that true emotional maturity begins when a person learns to regulate their feelings internally rather than through other people. In solitude, he reflects, recalibrates, and grows. He can sit with discomfort, process pain, and transform it into wisdom. This is why he doesn't react impulsively or make decisions based on fear. He has developed the strength to pause, think, and respond with intention. His calmness isn't accidental. It has been earned through countless moments of sitting with himself. His solitude teaches him patience. He knows that instant gratification often leads to long-term regret. That's why he doesn't rush into connections, commitments, or conflicts. He takes time to understand what he truly wants. Emotional maturity means he doesn't force people to stay, nor does he chase those who choose to leave. He respects the natural flow of relationships because he understands one truth deeply. What is aligned will remain, and what is not will fall away. His emotional intelligence allows him to release without resentment and accept without attachment. In solitude, he learns responsibility. He doesn't blame others for his life. He doesn't project his wounds onto people around him. Instead, he confronts his patterns, acknowledges his mistakes, and grows from them. His emotional maturity is seen in his accountability. He doesn't repeat cycles. He breaks them. He doesn't cling to excuses. He seeks solutions. While others pinpoint everything around them as the reason for their struggles, he looks inward, knowing that self-awareness is the first step toward transformation. His solitude gives him emotional independence. He does not crumble when life gets difficult because he has already practiced standing alone. Hard times don't scare him. Challenges don't destabilize him. He doesn't panic, react, or seek rescue from others. He trusts his ability to navigate storms because he has built a strong relationship with himself. He knows that he can rely on his own mind, discipline, and values. This emotional maturity becomes visible in how he interacts with people. He listens more than he speaks. He observes before he judges. He responds instead of reacting. He respects boundaries because he honors his own. He doesn't feel threatened by other people's emotions. They don't overwhelm him or dictate his behavior. His inner balance makes others feel safe around him. His presence is grounded, steady, and calm because he has done the inner work privately. His solitude doesn't isolate him. It elevates him. It turns him into a man who leads with emotional strength rather than emotional chaos, a man who gives without losing himself, and a man who connects without depending. Independence signals strength, not detachment, because it shows that he can stand on his own without needing someone to validate his worth. He isn't distant because he doesn't care. He is independent because he has built a life grounded in purpose, discipline, and self-respect. He doesn't fear connection. He simply refuses to rely on others to define his identity. This kind of independence is not about pushing people away, but about ensuring that he never loses himself in the process of caring for others. His strength comes from knowing that his happiness, stability, and direction come from within, not from external attachments. He doesn't cling to people, outcomes, or relationships because he has learned to trust his own path. He understands that relationships built on neediness eventually collapse, while relationships built on strength and individuality thrive. His independence means he contributes to a relationship from a place of fullness, not emptiness. He doesn't drain others emotionally because he has already done the work of filling himself. This is why people describe him as grounded, calm, and self-assured. He brings stability, not chaos, peace, not pressure. His independence also shows emotional discipline. He knows that depending too heavily on others for reassurance leads to disappointment and insecurity. So he remains connected but not dependent, loving but not attached, present but not consumed. This balance allows him to love with clarity instead of fear. He doesn't use love as a crutch. He chooses it from a place of strength. When he walks alongside someone, it's because he genuinely wants to, not because he needs them to complete him. This is what makes him different. His presence feels intentional, not desperate. Independence is also a reflection of responsibility. He doesn't wait for someone to fix his life. He builds it. He takes ownership of his choices, his growth, and his future. When challenges appear, he doesn't collapse or seek rescue. He steps up. He faces situations with courage because he knows he has the strength to handle them. People trust him because he has proven that he doesn't crumble under pressure. His independence makes him reliable, someone who can carry his own weight without burdening others. This strength doesn't mean he doesn't feel emotions or desire connection. It means he refuses to sacrifice his identity for closeness. He doesn't merge into someone else's life to the point where he disappears. Instead, he maintains his individuality, his goals, his routines, his boundaries. This is what gives depth to his relationships. When he gives his time or attention, it holds value because it is a choice, not a dependency. He doesn't overextend himself or lose focus just to be liked. His independence protects him from being manipulated, drained, or controlled. Because he stands strong on his own, he becomes someone people naturally gravitate toward. His independence is not a wall, it is a foundation. It allows him to show up fully without fear of abandonment or rejection. When he loves with confidence. When he commits, he does so because he is ready, not because he is afraid to be alone. His independence makes his presence powerful and his connections meaningful. This is why his strength is unmistakable, even in silence. Women trust the man who isn't afraid to lose because his confidence doesn't come from controlling the outcome. It comes from controlling himself. He isn't driven by fear, insecurity, or desperation. He doesn't cling, chase, or negotiate his worth. He understands that what is meant to stay will stay, and what isn't aligned will naturally fall away. This acceptance gives him a quiet, powerful presence that makes women feel safe. When a man isn't afraid to lose someone, it shows that he isn't operating from scarcity. He is operating from self-respect. He doesn't bend his values just to be chosen. He doesn't shrink himself to keep someone comfortable. He doesn't tolerate disrespect in the hope that things will improve. His ability to walk away with dignity shows emotional strength. Women trust this because they know he won't stay out of fear, but out of genuine intention. A man who isn't afraid to lose will never beg for attention, settle for breadcrumbs, or allow poor treatment. He holds himself to a higher standard, and that standard naturally elevates the dynamic. His fearlessness also reveals discipline. He has trained himself to stay calm under pressure, to respond rather than react, and to choose peace over chaos. He knows that losing someone is not the end of him. He has survived worse, rebuilt from less, and grown through pain. This resilience makes him dependable. Women trust him because he isn't emotionally fragile. He doesn't break when things get difficult. Instead, he stays grounded, steady, and mature. He can handle conflict without blowing up, shutting down, or running away. A man who isn't afraid to lose speaks his truth without hesitation. He doesn't sugarcoat, manipulate, or pretend to be someone he's not. He communicates clearly because he isn't worried about pleasing everyone. This honesty creates trust. Women can sense when a man is being authentic versus when he is performing to keep them around. The man unafraid of loss doesn't perform. He lives in alignment with who he is. His words and actions match. His boundaries are firm. His intentions are clean. He never lowers himself to desperation, and that is exactly why he becomes irresistible. When a man knows he can stand alone, he becomes a man who chooses rather than a man who waits to be chosen. Women trust him because his interest isn't dependent on how much attention he gets or how available someone is. His connection is based on compatibility, respect, and genuine emotion, not fear of being alone. This man also values emotional independence. He doesn't put the weight of his entire happiness on one person. He doesn't expect someone to fill his emptiness or fix his wounds. Instead, he brings a whole, strong version of himself into the relationship. This makes the connection healthier and more stable. Women trust him because they can feel the difference between a man who needs them to survive and a man who chooses them because he genuinely wants them. His courage to let go is what makes him trustworthy. It shows he is secure, balanced, and capable of loving without losing himself. A man who isn't afraid to lose will protect the relationship, nurture it, and honor it, not because he fears the end, but because he values the connection. And this is exactly why women trust him more than the man who clings in fear. He sets boundaries without apology because he understands that protecting his peace is not selfish. It's necessary. He doesn't over-explain, justify, or soften his limits to make others comfortable. He knows that without boundaries, he loses himself in the expectations, demands, and emotional weight of everyone around him. So he stands firm. He says what he means what he says, and stays consistent with his standards. This isn't arrogance. It is emotional clarity. He knows who he is, what he will tolerate, and what he will not allow into his life. A man who sets boundaries isn't cold. He is mature. He realizes that yes means nothing if he cannot say no. He doesn't allow people to overstep, take advantage, or assume access to his time, energy, or emotions. When something doesn't align with his values or disrupts his peace, he doesn't hesitate to distance himself. He doesn't fear rejection because he isn't seeking approval. He understands that anyone who is meant to be in his life will respect his limits, not test them. His boundaries also reflect a deep sense of self-respect. He doesn't tolerate disrespect disguised as jokes, manipulation masked as love, or chaos presented as passion. He is calm but unwavering. When someone tries to push past his limits, he doesn't argue, he simply enforces. He doesn't get trapped in emotional battles or endless explanations. He knows that a boundary without consequence is just a request, and he refuses to beg for basic respect. A man who sets boundaries values his time. He knows that giving too much of himself to the wrong people drains the energy he needs for his goals, growth, and purpose. That's why he is intentional about where he invests himself. His priorities are clear and he protects them. Whether it's his work, his mental health, or his personal space, he honors the things that matter to him. He doesn't sacrifice his well-being for temporary comfort or superficial validation. His boundaries create emotional safety, not only for himself, but for those around him. Because he knows how to protect his own peace, he becomes someone who can be trusted. He doesn't explode in anger, suppress feelings, or allow resentment to build. He expresses his needs clearly and early. This emotional discipline makes him steady and reliable. Someone who does not rely on others to guess what he wants or tolerate things that will eventually destroy the relationship. He also sets boundaries in love. He doesn't lose himself trying to please a partner, and he doesn't compromise his standards for affection. If someone tries to control him, manipulate him, or push him into emotional dependency, he steps back. Love does not blind him to disrespect. His boundaries ensure that any connection he forms is healthy, balanced, and built on mutual respect. Because he isn't afraid to enforce limits, he becomes a man people respect, even if they don't always understand him. Women especially recognize this strength. A man who can set boundaries without apology is a man who knows his worth, protects his identity, and refuses to abandon himself for anyone. His boundaries are not walls. They are gates that ensure only what is meant for him enters his life. Mystery comes naturally to the man who values his time because he isn't available to everyone, and he doesn't live his life in constant exposure. He doesn't announce his every move, broadcast his feelings, or seek attention to feel significant. His priorities are clear. His growth, his goals, and his peace come first. Because he is focused on building something meaningful, he doesn't waste his time explaining himself to people who haven't earned that access. This selective presence creates an effortless mystery, not because he is trying to be mysterious, but because he is simply intentional. He is not glued to his phone. He doesn't respond instantly to every message. He doesn't entertain meaningless conversations that drain his energy. He isn't available on demand because his time is valuable, and he treats it that way. His attention is earned, not taken for granted. This naturally makes others wonder what he is doing, what he is thinking, and where his mind truly is. He is present when he chooses to be, and absent when he needs to be, without guilt or explanation. People often mistake mystery for games, but with him, it's not a strategy. It's a lifestyle of discipline. He doesn't overshare because he understands that privacy is power. Not everyone needs to know his plans, his struggles, or his successes. Only a few people have access to the deeper layers of his life, and he chooses those few wisely. This self-control creates a sense of intrigue around him. Others sense that there is more beneath the surface, more depth than he reveals, and more strength in what he doesn't say. When he speaks, people listen because he doesn't talk just to fill silence. His words carry weight. He doesn't ramble or explain himself endlessly. He communicates with purpose. This selective communication makes him more attractive and respected. He doesn't feel the need to convince anyone of his intentions. His actions speak for him, and his silence holds just as much meaning. Because he values his time, he doesn't rush into connections. He observes before he engages, and he listens before he reveals. This makes him unpredictable in the best way. People cannot easily categorize him, and that's what keeps them drawn in. He doesn't show all his cards at once. He reveals himself slowly, naturally, and authentically. This pacing makes his presence feel rare, and anything rare becomes valuable. He isn't mysterious because he is hiding. He is mysterious because he is building. While others are busy trying to be seen, he is busy becoming someone worth noticing. His focus, ambition, and self-discipline create a quiet confidence that pulls people toward him. When he gives his time, it holds weight. When he shares his thoughts, it carries meaning. When he opens up, it feels significant because it doesn't happen often. This natural mystery makes him unforgettable, not because he tries to be elusive, but because he is genuinely committed to a life of purpose rather than performance. His value of time creates an aura, one that makes people wonder, respect, and admire him without ever needing to try. A man who stands alone can lead himself because he does not wait for direction, approval, or permission to take control of his life. He understands that leadership starts from within, long before it ever influences the world outside. When he stands alone, he is forced to rely on his own judgment, his own discipline, and his own instincts. He cannot blame others for the path he chooses, nor can he hide behind excuses. This self-reliance shapes him into a man who knows exactly where he's going and why. He doesn't need someone to constantly push him, motivate him, or guide him. He creates his own structure. He sets his own expectations. He follows through on his commitments because he understands that his future depends on the actions he takes today. Standing alone gives him clarity. There is no noise, no distraction, no dependency to cloud his decisions. He becomes aware of his strengths, honest about his weaknesses, and intentional about his growth. This awareness makes him a leader not only in his own life, but in any environment he steps into. When a man can lead himself, he becomes unstoppable. He doesn't crumble when others disappoint him because he never built his life around their support. He doesn't slow down when no one is watching because he holds himself accountable. He knows that real leadership is not about leading others first. It's about mastering your own habits, emotions, and direction. Through solitude, he learns discipline. Through responsibility, he learns consistency. Through silence, he learns wisdom. Standing alone teaches him resilience. It forces him to solve problems without expecting rescue and to make difficult decisions without waiting for approval. He learns how to face challenges head-on instead of hiding behind people or circumstances. This shapes him into a man who can handle adversity with confidence, a man who does not panic when life becomes difficult. Because he is used to guiding himself through storms, others naturally trust his judgment. They sense that his direction comes from experience, not guesswork. He leads himself by staying true to his values. He doesn't drift with trends or opinions. He follows his principles even when they make him different. He doesn't sacrifice his identity just to fit in or gain acceptance. His independence becomes a compass that keeps him aligned with the life he is building. This consistency makes his presence powerful. People can feel that he moves with purpose, not impulse. Because he stands alone, he learns to listen to his inner voice more than the noise of the world. He doesn't seek validation for every step he takes. He doesn't need applause to know he's on the right track. He trusts himself. He believes in the vision he is creating. This inner leadership makes him reliable, calm, and unshakable. And when he eventually chooses to lead others, he does so from a place of strength, not ego. He leads by example, not force. He inspires through his actions, not his words. A man who can lead himself becomes a man others willingly follow, not because he demands it, but because he has proven that he can stand alone and still move forward with power, clarity, and purpose. His presence is earned, not given away, because he understands the value of his energy. He doesn't offer himself freely to anyone simply because they want access. He knows that his time, attention, and emotional presence carry weight, so he chooses where to invest them with intention. He doesn't show up everywhere for everyone because he isn't seeking validation or approval. He isn't trying to be liked. He is trying to stay aligned. This makes his presence feel powerful because it is not common and it is not handed out without purpose. He doesn't confuse availability with loyalty. He knows that being everywhere for everyone dilutes his strength, so he reserves his presence for people and situations that genuinely deserve it. He protects his space not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. He has learned that when you give too much of yourself to the wrong people, you lose the parts of you that matter most. So he guards those parts. He shows up only where there is respect, depth, and reciprocity. People feel privileged when he chooses to be there, not because he plays games, but because he is selective. His presence is earned because he understands boundaries. He doesn't allow people to pull him into drama, chaos, or emotional dependency. He doesn't entertain those who take without giving or those who expect without appreciating. He knows his worth and he will not lower it to make someone stay. If his silence bothers someone, he lets it. If his distance confuses someone, he doesn't chase to clarify. He has reached a point where he no longer sacrifices his peace to keep others comfortable. Those who want him in their life must show consistency, loyalty, and respect. He is not overly accessible because he respects his own goals. His life is built with purpose. He has dreams that require his focus, routines that require discipline, and a future that requires commitment. He doesn't waste hours on meaningless conversations or unbalanced relationships. His time is sacred and he uses it wisely. This makes him magnetic because people can sense that he is a man who values himself. And in a world where so many are desperate for attention, a man who is selective becomes unforgettable. He shows up authentically when he chooses to be present. He doesn't pretend, he doesn't perform, and he doesn't exaggerate to impress. His honesty makes his presence meaningful. When he listens, he pays attention. When he speaks with intention. When he supports someone, he does it wholeheartedly. Because his presence is selective, it is impactful. People feel seen, heard, and valued when he chooses to give his time. He doesn't need to announce his worth. His absence does that for him. When he steps away, people notice. When he walks into a room, people feel it. Not because he demands attention, but because he carries himself with quiet confidence. He doesn't flood the world with his presence. He offers it sparingly, intentionally, and honestly. This is what makes him rare, and rarity is always revered. His presence is earned, not given, because he knows exactly who he is, and he refuses to give pieces of himself to those who haven't earned the right to receive them. The truth is, a man who stands alone is not unreachable, he is simply intentional. Every quality he carries, from his self-respect to his emotional maturity, his independence to his boundaries, his mystery to his strength, comes from one place, a deep commitment to himself. He does not choose solitude out of fear, but out of clarity. He does not love from insecurity, but from wholeness, and he does not lead with ego, but with purpose. Women are drawn to him because he represents something rare in today's world. A man who is complete within himself, a man who does not chase attention, abandon his values, or compromise his identity. A man who can walk alone, but chooses connection when it aligns with his truth. His presence is earned, his time is intentional, and his heart is protected by wisdom, not walls. This is the real reason women choose the man who stands alone. Not because he is distant, but because he is grounded. Not because he is hard to get, but because he is hard to shake. Not because he withholds love, but because he offers it with clarity, strength, and purpose. He is the man who doesn't just walk his path, he defines it. And any woman who joins him does so knowing she is walking beside a man who leads himself first, stands firm in who he is, and chooses connection from power, not fear.